It's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. These are our top stories this morning. Clear the beds. NHS bosses prepare for major disruption during next week's ambulance strike.
Day 2 of the latest rail strikes, and town and city centres up and down the country are being hit on what should be one of the busiest shopping days of the year.
As 4 people are killed in fresh Russian missile strikes, a senior Ukrainian general tells Sky News he's preparing for the possibility of a huge renewed Russian offensive. Reports the US Select Committee is set to move forward on pursuing criminal charges against former President Donald Trump. Fun for some, but snow and freezing temperatures disrupt travel for many. We'll bring you all the latest. We'll also have the sport for you as England's cricketers take on Pakistan in a third test in Karachi.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Later in the programme, a festive treat from Grammy Award-winning singer Joss Stone, who's releasing her first Christmas album. And at 1:45, we'll take a look at the papers with Pete Price and Gemma Forte. Hello, good morning. Welcome to the programme. Hospitals are being warned to free up the maximum number of beds ready for extensive disruption when ambulance crews walk out next week. NHS England's Chief Operating Officer, Sir David Sloman, is suggesting a raft of other measures to get through what he says will be a very challenging period. Well, ambulance crews are due to walk out for 2 days on December the 21st and the 28th in support of their pay claim. In a letter to hospitals, he calls for patients who complete emergency medical care to be moved out of emergency departments and the rapid discharge of medically fit patients from acute community and mental health wards. The aim is to free up beds. This may involve the creation of observation areas and additional beds elsewhere in the hospital. Well, hospitals are also being urged to put in place plans to release all ambulances from emergency departments within 15 minutes and get them back on the road. Currently, some hospitals have queues of ambulances waiting for hours to discharge patients. Well, our political correspondent Rob Powell joins me now from Westminster. And Rob, NHS bosses there warning of some big trouble ahead.
Yeah, and I think you get a sense that bosses in the health service and also government ministers seem arguably more worried about this ambulance worker strike that's due on Wednesday than they are about the nurses' strike that is due on Tuesday, the first day of which happened on Thursday last week as well. I think what the aim of this letter that went out to hospitals last night from NHS leaders is to try and free up beds in hospitals to get rid of the bottleneck that means that patients can't be moved from A&E, from emergency wards, onto normal wards. And as a result, that bottleneck means that ambulances can't drop off new patients and are facing long waits to hand over patients to hospital staff. Now, if that happened on a strike day, it may mean that the ambulances that are on the road, that aren't impacted by the strike action, could be snarled up outside hospitals, making the whole situation worse. So that's why you're seeing this attempt to safely discharge any patients where it's possible. Now, this dispute is separate from the nursing dispute. It involves England and Wales ambulance workers, paramedics, other 999 staff who are represented by 3 big unions, GMB, Unite and Unison. It's about pay, though, so the issue is the same as the nurses' dispute. The unions want something that goes somewhere near inflation or keeps up with rising prices, so you're talking double digits. The government offer so far is between 4 and 5%. And last night, the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, suggested the government would not look again at this issue of pay. This is what he said.
The government has done its part by saying, OK, it's tough times, we know that, but we're going to accept it. Remember, if more is paid to one group, then there's less available for others. So this affects everybody in the public services, and a responsible government has got to make this stack up.
Now, there have been some provisions made to try and offset some of the disruption. We know about troops going into hospitals to train up to help with ambulance crews. Now, they won't necessarily be driving ambulances on emergency call-outs, but they'll be dealing with other more routine issues. Of course, this comes as nurses prepare to walk out again. One day before ambulance workers walk out, you'll get nurses going on strike as well. Their first day of strike action on Thursday saw 16,000 surgeries, appointments, procedures rescheduled. Now, that is far below what was estimated by the government initially. They'd estimated 70,000, so not as much disruption caused as they had previously expected. There doesn't seem any resolution on that row on the horizon either, though. Pat Cullen, the General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, has given an interview to The Times today, accusing the Health Secretary of adopting a macho and confrontational approach to talks. Now, she wants the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to step in. He's already made clear, though, that he thinks the existing pay settlement should be kept to.
Rob in Westminster, thank you. Towns and city centres will be hit today on what should be one of the busiest shopping days of the year. It's day 2 of the latest strike by rail staff, and it's having a devastating impact on shopkeepers and bar owners. Well, after fresh talks with the government, the RMT leader Mick Lynch says he believes a deal is achievable. But for now, very little is moving. Apologies for that. This latest 48-hour strike is affecting Network Rail and 14 operating companies nationwide. Just a fraction of scheduled trains will be running. To give you a sense of the disruption, only 1 in 5 trains running the most recent strike. And as a result, some services will start later and finish earlier, with some areas going through any train services whatsoever. And then disruption is expected to continue into tomorrow, as some trains will not be in their usual starting positions on regular days. Well, let's bring in Emma Birchley now, who's at London Paddington Station for us this morning. And Emma, day 2 of the strikes and still no end in sight when it comes to the standoff between unions and the government.
Yes, and what a difficult time for it to come for people trying to get out shopping. This is the penultimate Saturday before Christmas. I've been in and had a look at the departure boards inside Paddington Station. Nothing running until 7:30. And then only a handful of trains up and down the country every hour, and the same up and down the country. So this will cause an enormous amount of disruption. And of course, shops really need the business after what's been an incredibly difficult time with the COVID pandemic. There have been predictions about how the hospitality industry is going to be hit during December. They say it's going to cost £1.5 billion, so people cancelling Christmas dues, bars, restaurants all being hit. An incredibly difficult time. Now, when you listen to what Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the RMT, has to say, he said most recently that very simple steps are needed on both sides, he believes, to reach some kind of solution. So maybe it's possible that the strikes due to begin on Christmas Eve once more could be called off, but that is going to require some kind of breakthrough. And this week already, we have seen 4 days of strikes. And if things aren't resolved, again into the new year, the disruption continues. Another 4 days, 2 48-hour strikes planned for that first week in January. So an incredibly difficult time for people, an incredible amount of uncertainty and not knowing, quite simply, whether they can get a train when they want one.
Emma, thank you. Well, to Ukraine now, where at least 4 people have died in what's been described as a massive new wave of Russian missile strikes in the past 36 hours. The attacks came as a senior Ukrainian commander warned that he's preparing for the possibility of a huge renewed Russian offensive involving hundreds of thousands of troops. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But first, let's take a look then at the latest attacks, which have again targeted infrastructure. There were powerful explosions in the capital, Kyiv, northeastern Kharkiv, and also in President Zelensky's hometown of Kryvyi Rih. The Black Sea region of Odessa was also hit, including the central city of Vinnytsia, Poltava, and northern Sumy region. Ukrainians say of the 76 missiles fired, 60 were shot down. In Kiev, residents had to take shelter inside underground train stations. Elsewhere, many areas across the country were left without power. Here's our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, on the warning of plans for a significant Russian offensive in the new year.
This is one of Ukraine's top commanders. Andriy Kovalchuk led a major offensive that recaptured the southern city of Kherson. He's now focusing on new targets, but also preparing for a possible fight back by Russia, 1 year on from the full-scale invasion.
People think maybe on the anniversary, the 24th of February, Russia will try again to attack from the north, from the east, from the south. Are you anticipating that could happen?
Так, ми передбачаємо такі варіанти, такі сценарії і, звичайно, готуємося. І такі варіанти ми розглядаємо, що можуть піти з Білорусі, можуть підготуватися, піти на кінець, можливо, лютого, можливо, пізніше.
The general said Russia's Vladimir Putin may ultimately order millions of his soldiers to fight.
Я думаю, що Путін це обдумує і такий варіант ми не можемо відкидувати. Тобто ми маємо до цього бути готові.
And would you be able to deal with that?
Однозначно, так. Да. Сьогодні має бути чітка позиція наших партнерів, наша і наших партнерів про те, що якщо Путін дозволить собі повну мобілізацію, то партнери готові надати всі сили і засоби для зупинки вже не там 300-тисячної армії, а мільйонної армії.
This was the commander as he toured Kherson city after its liberation last month. He says Ukraine will win this war. It's just a matter of when.
Хотів би, щоб і раніше, в цьому році ми поставили крапку на всіх питаннях. Але я вірю, да, що в наступному році ми все-таки доведемо все до логічного завершення і переможемо.
As a decorated and highly experienced officer, he knows that could well mean the fiercest fighting is yet to come. Deborah Haynes, Sky News in southern Ukraine.
On to some of today's other headlines now. And a man and woman have been arrested following the discovery of the bodies of two young boys at an address in East London. Emergency services were called to the address in Dagenham, where they found the bodies of two boys, aged 2 and 5, who died at the scene. The Metropolitan Police says both adults were known to the children. 3 women aged 21, 23 and 33 remain in a critical condition in hospital following a crush outside a concert by the Afrobeat artist Ashake in Brixton in South London. Police were called to the venue after witnesses reported that some members of the crowd had tried to force their way into the venue. The government has launched an £18 million information campaign to help people save energy and cut their bills. The campaign will provide tips on some simple steps to take, like turning appliances off at the plug and insulating your home properly using drought excluders.
It's to help families save money off their own energy bills with actually some surprisingly straightforward measures, some of which people may not have heard of before, like turning down the boiler flow temperature, which doesn't impact on the temperature of your house or the radiators, but can save you perhaps £100 a year on average.
The charges against former US President Donald Trump in connection with the 2021 Capitol riots have moved a step closer. The US House Select Committee investigating the attack is preparing to vote on urging the Justice Department to pursue criminal charges against Mr. Trump, charges which could include insurrection and conspiracy. Sky's James Matthews has the latest.
These charges would come as no real surprise. This January, the Sixth Committee has spent many months laying down an insurrection timeline with Donald Trump very much at its heart. For them to conclude that there should be no criminal charges would be for them to say he has no questions to answer, and that is extremely unlikely to happen. It's not a decision for this committee, of course, to launch a prosecution. This is a politician's decision. They make the referral to the Department of Justice, and it's for them to decide whether or not to pursue criminal charges. They will say this is an airtight investigation, very much for them, not affected by external events, but it does change the context in which they operate. For the political detectives to recommend a prosecution, it makes it awkward for the actual detectives to then turn round and say Donald Trump doesn't have a case to answer. That would not necessarily be straightforward. In the middle of all of this, of course, is Donald Trump himself planning a run for a second term in the White House, but now staring down the barrel of more time spent in the courthouse than on the campaign trail.
James Matthews there. Now, the UK is still in the grip of the cold weather, with yellow weather warnings issued for today and tomorrow. Our correspondent Katerina Vitozzi has spoken to one family about how the sub-zero temperatures are worsening the impacts of the rising costs of living for them.
It's 6 p.m. and already -3.
James!
The Williams family know they've got another cold night ahead.
So how has it felt in here over the last couple of nights? Absolutely freezing. And you are constantly sat watching that meter.
How does that make you feel?
Sick, because it's usually over budget by the end of every week.
The collision of freezing temperatures and the rising cost of living has hit this family with unbelievable force. Claire works full-time, but even when it's so cold, can barely afford to put the heating on.
We'll put it on for about 15, 20 minutes maybe when we get home from work and school. And then it's off again for the rest of the night and it doesn't go on in the morning. Just can't afford to.
Must be hard. Do the kids ever say, Mum, can we just put the heating on for another 10 minutes, another 5 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that they want to do when they come home from school is put the heating on because they're usually home before me. But bless them, they wait until I get home because they know it's expensive. So they'll just snuggle themselves up in blankets.
There is no respite, though, from the cold, and it's making them all sick, intensifying 14-year-old Benjamin's asthma.
It's been absolutely freezing when I go to bed, and I've not been able to sleep properly because it's just affected the way that I can breathe.
I come back in and it's freezing, like I can't feel my hands. So I just get into this and wrap up on the sofa.
That must be pretty hard to hear.
It is. I mean, I earn a pretty decent wage and I should be able to provide a warmer home for my kids, but we're having to kind of ration. I don't claim any additional benefits or anything like that. So people like us get left
to a winter with many cold months ahead.
Gosh, it does feel colder out here, doesn't it? What sort of a toll is it taking on you?
I'm tired. And when it comes to the point of considering whether I need to get a second job or not, will I be able to do that?
Their festive lights are up, but not on. Theirs is a season not of abundance, but of economies, where the wish isn't for a white Christmas, just a warm one. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in Cheshire.
And joining me now is Sky meteorologist Kirsty McCabe. And Kirsty, at least one more night of freezing temperatures to contend with.
That's right, Vanessa. It has been another very cold night for many of us, although for some parts of Scotland, Ireland and the northwest, actually temperatures here are higher than they've been on previous nights, but still, for many, it's sub-zero this morning. So widely across the UK and Ireland, you can see it's a very cold start today. In some parts of the UK, especially towards the northeast of Scotland and also across central southern England, we've seen temperatures -6 to -10, -12.2 in Writtle, which is near Chelmsford in Essex. So that's the coldest spot so far this morning. We have got weather warnings out, as you'd expect. It's yellow weather warnings for ice mainly across parts of Scotland, also western fringes of England and Wales, and that's where we've had the snow in previous days is causing icy conditions this morning, but also we've got some wintry showers coming in today. So some bands of rain, sleet and snow moving in from the west from the northwest, and they'll be sinking a little bit further south, but mainly affecting western Scotland, western parts of Wales, the southwest of England, northern England. So those are the main focus for some wintry showers today. Again, a bitterly cold day, maybe a degree or two higher than previous days, but changes coming with the jet stream. That's going to be moving northwards again, so by the time it gets to us, it will bring some very wet and windy conditions, but also much milder air. By Monday, temperatures jumping up into double digits. Difficult transition though. Sunday, when the rain comes in, we're going to see a brief period of snow, a risk of freezing rain, so a risk of black ice on the roads, and still very cold across the far north. Could be some blizzard conditions for a time with this very wet and windy weather coming in. And then Monday, look at the difference in the temperatures. 13, 14 degrees. It's going to feel positively welcome change, I'd say. The usual December average is around, say, 6 to 8 degrees, so very much milder by the time we get to Monday. Now, if you're wondering if we'll hold on to the mild weather, well, the run up to Christmas looks like things might turn a little bit colder again, but not as cold as what we've just had.
Now, in the 20 years since Cancer Research UK was founded, death rates from the disease have fallen by 16% due to improvements in screening and more effective treatment. Well, I'm now joined by Jayshree Jal, who, as you can see, is in the screen, who's been cancer-free for 10 years, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2006. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jayshree. You were diagnosed in 2006. And also, we have, as you can see here, Jackie, of course, our very own Jackie Beltrell, who's also a cancer survivor. And Jayshree, I'll come to you first. Thank you, firstly, so much for taking the time out to speak to us. And I'll come to you first. I just want to get an understanding, and I know that it'll be very difficult, but what can you remember that moment when the news was delivered to you? What was going through your mind at the time?
When I've been told you have a cancer, I thought I got death sentence. I was numb. But then I decided, no, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to sit corner of the sofa and feel sorry for myself.
Absolutely. And Jackie, I mean, what Jayshree's saying, is that something that you echo as well? What was it like? Because, of course, for you, it was 2013 when you were diagnosed, and then you had another blow in 2020. So what was it like for you when that news was delivered?
Well, 2013, I got diagnosed on Christmas Eve, and it was just the worst Christmas ever because, like Jayshree, I thought, death sentence, I'm going to die, you know, the worst moment of my life. But then when I was re-diagnosed and I sort of got through that and did the chemo and took the nasty medicine and all the rest of it, when I got through that and then I was diagnosed, you know, later on in 2020 with stage 4 cancer, which is not curable. You just hope it can be managed for as long as it can be managed. I would have given anything to swap that moment for the original moment that I thought was so bad back in 2013, realising that, you know, it's so curable for many women now. My situation's very unusual, and most people are like Jayshree, and they will have their bouts with breast cancer, and they'll move on from it. Not everyone, of course, but you know, cancer research has come so far in such a short time.
And Jayshree, how have things been for you in terms of the sort of treatments that you've been having and just living, in just kind of going through the initial stages when the announcement was obviously first broken?
Yeah, what happened? I was working with Luton PCT, and my subject was breast cancer, awareness of the breast cancer and smear test. And they gave me projector. I go to all the day center and everywhere and show the ladies, you know, how to check your breast and things like that. And when I was 69, it was my last appointment for the mammogram. And I went there and find out about the tumor, and I think mammogram saved my life. They find the trick because it was the last. But those days, after 70, they don't send the appointment. But now we can do the appointment after 70, but we have to make it. It automatically don't come. And my message is all the ladies, Asian ladies, all my friends and family, I ask them, will you go for mammogram? If you, oh no, we're 70, we can't go. I says, yes, you can go. You can make the appointment and check. Early you find out, early chances you have recovering for yourself. And that's I'm doing even now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, Jackie, what Jay Shree's saying there, and one of the things that I also get from you is that message of empowering people to actually, face this head on, but also getting yourself checked as well.
Yeah, and Jay Shree, well done for insisting on that mammogram, because there is a problem. The NHS have acknowledged there is a problem with the South Asian community and the Black community not turning up to their screenings. There's also a cultural thing of the mother is in charge of the family and has to be strong and, kind of puts themselves at the bottom of the pile if they need to go to the doctor or they have a problem or they find a lump. And really that shouldn't be the case. And just, well done, Jay Shree, for, you're sticking to your guns and going there, because a lot of women might not have done that.
And it's really crucial, isn't it? Because it's about catching it early, isn't it? And what can be done rather than waiting for the situation to get to a stage 4, for example, whereas you say you cannot cure it, you can try and manage it.
Well, yes. I mean, getting it early obviously is very key. And Jay Shree, fantastic that you look so healthy and so well. I mean, not everybody can see the lump. Not everybody can be that lucky that you've spotted something and it's early. It might be something that doesn't manifest itself as a lump, which is why going to screenings is so good. But what's amazing about our situation is that in the last 10 years, research has come so far that you're very targeted now in terms of your treatment. It's not like everyone is given loads of chemo. It's very specific to your cancer. Did you have chemotherapy, Jay Shree?
Yes, I have. I've been told by the consultant I don't need chemo and radiation because my cancer was stage 2.
Yeah.
And they says they can remove the nipple and take the tumor out, and that's it. But I was volunteered to do the proper surgery. And I said, I would like to have a chemo as well. But consultant says, why you have to go? Because you don't need it. But I volunteered and I had my 6th cycle of chemo.
And Jay Shree, I just want to find out from you, where is it that you draw your strength from? And when you were going through that, what kept you going? Is it your family, for example, that kept you going?
Yeah, my family support is fantastic. My daughter was in Canada. She came from Canada. My daughter-in-law, my husband, my son were the pillar of my life. They helped me a lot. And they encouraged me to chemo. And that time I was working with NHS and my title was Community Food Advisor. And after the chemo, I started my working. I lost all my hair. So I was wearing cap and scarf, and people says, why are you wearing a scarf? So I take it out and I had a cancer. I don't hide my illness. I tell everyone, early you find out, early you have a chance to survive. So just go for the mammogram, check if you find anything, mammogram or any cancer. Early stage, you have more survive. And if you help the cancer research, this research more and more and save people's lives. And I believe in that 100%.
Thank you so much, Jay Shree. And Jackie, I have to come to you because I see you here every day, well, most days when we're here, and you just come in and you just crack on with it. And I also want to ask you the same question. Where do you get your strength from? What is it that keeps you going?
It's the drugs mostly.
Jackie.
In the nicest possible way. I've been very lucky in my unluckiness, you could say, because I've got a stage 4 cancer. It's technically not curable, but I'm on the very, very latest drug that's come off the research line. And for me, it's worked like spectacularly well, to the point where, one of my scans, I was riddled with cancer. 3 months later, there was nothing there to see.
Amazing.
And that drug would not have been available, 5 years ago. It just wouldn't have existed for my type of cancer. So I just feel very, very lucky that people are constantly beavering away trying to find that cure, and it will come. It just take a little bit of time, but it will come.
But we're seeing it, and it's just fantastic. And it's fantastic to just, as I say, just seeing you just going on, just cracking on with it is what I was just saying it to you. You just crack on with it.
What else are you going to do, right?
I know, right? Exactly. No, it's fantastic. And Jayshree, it's been so lovely speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking that time out to speak to us, but also just reiterating that advice. Go and get yourself checked. So Jayshree Jal and also our very own Jackie, thank you very much indeed to both of you for speaking to us. Thank you. Now, Sam Ryder said it looks like Christmas came early after his debut album topped the UK charts. His album, There's Nothing But Spaceman, reaching #1 in the charts means that he's become the first British male solo artist to reach #1 in more than 3 years. The 33-year-old singer has finally clinched top spot after finishing second in the Eurovision Song Contest and seeing his Eurovision entry, Spaceman, peak at #2 in the singles chart too. I just want to put it out there, he's got a good head of hair, doesn't he? Let's see how the weather is looking.
Anticipation is rising, and so is the atmosphere. Are you ready? The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the weather system in the Atlantic will bring some far milder conditions by the end of the week, but there is always a but. Change will be very messy. Currently, we're still in the cold air with some showers over many northern and western parts. This has given way to some icy stretches on a number of roads. Meanwhile, in the south and the southeast, it is largely clear and bitterly cold with some fog patches.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Coming up after the break, I'll be joined by broadcaster Pete Price and broadcaster and writer Gemma Forte for a look at some of today's inside pages. Welcome back with us this morning to review the papers. Our broadcaster and writer Gemma Forte and broadcaster Pete Price, and like magic, there they are right now. It's good to have both of you. And Pete, I do note the change in T-shirt there. Let me just come to you first, Gemma. This is an interesting story here. So the headline that we're seeing, Parliament sex tourist accused of sleaze on official trips overseas. So a lot of people will be wondering, what is this all about in the Times, page 6? Just tell us a little bit more about what this is about. I'll let you explain here.
OK, so it is indeed a sleazy little story here. So it's all about all-party parliamentary groups. Now, these are informal parliamentary bodies. They are sort of cross-party. And what happens is peers or MPs who have a cause that they feel really passionate about, they will liaise with other countries and they will go off essentially on all expenses paid trips on their own, on work time, to go and promote these issues or indeed to sort things out. And they do obviously have working itineraries while they're there, but apparently they're also using and abusing these trips to indulge in some rather boorish, old-fashioned, gross behaviour, quite frankly. Like, it isn't on to be representing your country than to be asking, oh, where's the nearest brothel, which has been reported. So Chris Bryant, who heads up parliamentary select committees, he is saying, look, these are serious grievances and they should be reported and we should be looking into them. And obviously this isn't acceptable, but also really, really uncomfortable for any women who are involved on these trips. And there's sort of talk about very entitled behaviour, very arrogant, perhaps not speaking to people in the correct way as well, and just not conducting themselves in a proper way and not being discreet about this behaviour at all. So not very pleasant and very, very awful in the times that we're living in as well, to be abusing these expenses and going off on these jollies and then behaving like that.
And of course, within this article, no individual named or implied, of course. And there are also some recommendations. The committee's report and recommendations did not concern the behaviour of MPs on trips, is what it says here in terms of what changes there could be. Let me move on then to the next story. Pete, I'll come to you for this one. This is in the page 7 of the Eye. And it's an interesting one. So the government's starting some energy-saving advertising, costing a few millions. But two things here. This is something that a lot of people were calling for at the start of the autumn period. But also, the advice, some of them, it's a little bit common sense, isn't it? Switching off the power from the plugs. I mean, you think?
I shake my head in disbelief at this article. Can I remind everyone, I'm not a lover of Boris, but when Boris said, put a blanket round your legs watching television, everyone laughed at him and mocked him. I've got a blanket over there now, which I use watching television. I think it's really nice. They're simple ideas. I come from a lifetime where I was taught to put the lights off in every room as I went out. And that's what I do now. In fact, I've got too many lights on here. This is actually costing me money today. But it's sensible things. But let me, please, bar humbug. Where I live, I've never seen so many Christmas decorations outside houses. I thought people had no money. I don't know what's going on. It is sensible. Turn your heating down, switch a radiator off in a room that you're not using. And here's a little tip. Buy a slow cooker. Put in a pan of scouse. Cost nothing. If you can't cook, throw everything in, stock cube, and there's some nice food to eat as well. It's been common. Listen, older people could write this advert.
Well, Pete, I should probably move to where you are, because on my street, nobody is putting up any Christmas decorations. What? I don't know what's wrong with them.
What?
I'm not going to do it.
Where I live, you don't need street lights. You honestly don't need street lights now. They've gone daft.
Gemma, let me come to you there. This next story is interesting. I mean, I just had a little chuckle myself just reading it. The Telegraph's page 4, bring your family to work to sort the festive post. You must have some very kind family members who'd agree to do that.
I know, everybody I know is absolutely flat out at this time of year. But yeah, this is Royal Mail. It has been described as a little bit of a desperate bid. But of course, they are trying to enable the post to be arriving in the midst of strike action. I mean, is it easier at this point to list public sector workers that aren't going to be striking across the board? And I really hope the government start to listen and look at the sort of barometer of how workers are feeling across the board. So yes, staff being asked just like enlist help. Anybody you can get your hands on. Granny, brother, daughter who can come in. And they will apparently be paid agency fees, which this is another thing. It's such a sort of false economy in the end, not paying people properly. It's a bit like in the NHS. There were those reports of wildly expensive agency doctors coming in for sort of £5,000 a day. So yeah, it's all a bit of a mess, isn't it? But yes, don't be expecting your usual Christmas cards to be turning up on time at this rate.
Well, I've got 2 nephews. I may have to make the most of them then and not pay them. I wouldn't get away with it, I tell you that one. Pete, this story is very interesting because, weirdly enough, one of my weird fears has been seeing some of these aquariums and thinking, what if it bursts, like the one behind you, for example? So this 82-foot aquarium tsunami, as they're saying, in Berlin. That's just remarkable.
Yeah, sadly, 1,500 fish are dead, a million litres of water, and it broke. They reckon it's because of the cold weather, so it wasn't anything sinister because it was the cold weather. But it's in a hotel. Luckily, it broke when it broke, and there weren't many guests around. A couple of guests have been had a problem with splinters of glass. But imagine if, when people were checking out, this went and burst. But that's my fear as well. And I come from an age, once again, in the old days, fish tanks weren't like they are now.
We've just run out of time. We've just run out of time. Don't go too far. Don't go too far. We'll be back after this break.